What's going on YouTube? Smashing Pumpkin here coming at you guys with the video today. Today I'd like to be discussing with you guys the 4 elemental dragons that appear in the upcoming Japanese set Lord of the Tachyon Galaxy. Basically they're known as the 4 element dragons because they're of the 4 different attributes: the earth dragon, the wind dragon, the fire dragon, and the water dragon. They have pretty unique summoning conditions, because you can either remove from play 2 dragons or 2 of that monster's attribute from play in order to special summon it from your hand or your graveyard. And they each have different effects depending upon which dragon. The earth dragon is that you send it to the graveyard and an earth monster in order to reborn a monster from the graveyard. I believe it's just your graveyard. Wind is the same thing except with wind monsters, and then you add a dragon from your deck to your hand. The water dragon is like a foolish, and then the fire one pops the card on the field. So, basically I kind of want to describe like the pros and the cons of these cards. The first con is that they're kind of expensive and not very efficient cards, basically, because they cost you 2 dragons or 2 elements from your side of the field or your hand. So that's depleting like a lot of your resources, unlike some boss monsters that like can remove from play monsters from your graveyard, or you just have to have a certain number of monsters in your graveyard. So they definitely got the short end of the stick with their summoning condition being so difficult. Second thing is that they don't really last very long. The reason being is because they have a clause somewhere in the middle of their text that says they return to your hand during your opponent's end phase. So they don't really stick around too long. And then they either have to end up being discard fodder, or you have to waste even more resources to bring them out again. Another kind of con is that there isn't really a mix and match thing. You have to have either 2 dragons or 2 of the wind, not both. I mean, not like one and the other, rather. Second thing is the reward is kind of low. What I mean by that is that when these cards get banished from the graveyard, well, banished period, really, you get to add 1 of that attribute dragon to your hand. A dragon of that monster's attribute, rather. So if you like remove from play the earth dragon, you can search your deck and add an earth dragon from your deck to your hand. A dragon that happens to be earth is what I'm saying. I'm sorry if this is getting a little bit confusing, but it's a very wordy card. Really, when I looked into it, I thought that was pretty sweet, because like you could just like mill it off and then like remove it for like, I forget which cards they are, but they're like they come in like Invasion of Chaos. They're like remove from play a wind and you special summon it. They're kind of cool. Anyway, I kind of looked at their targets though, and they're pretty lacking. Like, water only has 8 targets total, and none of them are really that good. So it's pretty much just going to be adding another copy of itself to your hand, which might not be the most productive thing. The fire dragon only has mass dragon as a viable target, unless you wanted to add something really terrible to your hand. And wind's targets are debris dragon and the dragoonity dragons, so that might not be the best either. And then earth only has totem and exploder dragon, which are both kind of lame. So basically the dragons are only going to be adding themselves, unless you also like tech in those cards. That's kind of besides the point. The final con of these cards is that they require sending itself and another of its element from your hand in order to activate their effects. So it's kind of very expensive, and you're not really getting like the bang for your buck with your cards, basically. because it costs 2 to get them out, and then you're costing a third card, and if it was from your hand, it's a fourth card. So basically you're turning 4 cards into, well, 3 to 4 cards into either a Reborn, a Foolish Burial, a destruction of 1 card on the field, or adding a dragon to your hand. So overall, they do seem a little bit bad, but there are a lot of pros to these cards. For one, they're pretty easy to summon, and they can be summoned from the hand or the grave, so milling them off is actually quite beneficial as opposed to being bad. Another nice thing about these cards is that they do have return value. And what I mean by that is that they don't just basically when they're in the graveyard they actually can do stuff, as opposed to cards that just don't really do anything when they're in the grave. Because you can get another copy of the dragon to your hand, and that's pretty sweet. Also, they fit into certain archetypes really well. The wind kind of fits with Mist Valleys and stuff, and it could be used in the Harpy deck. Water works pretty well with the Atlanteans, because when you discard the Atlantean, you can get their effect. And then they also work pretty well in frogs, because you can generally spam a lot of frogs pretty quickly. And then you can return the remove from play frogs with your Sea Lancer. So that's pretty nice. Fire and Earth didn't really have an archetype they fit into too well. Earth could technically be played in a gadget deck, but I don't know how productive that would be. And Fire could work in I don't know what Fire would work too well in. It would work really well in a deck that used Volcanic Shell though, because you could just send that to the graveyard and it would work pretty well. Another pro with these cards is they inflict damage very quickly, because basically you just send cards that otherwise would be useless in your hand to the graveyard or on the field, and you get a beater, and you can actually deal damage. So they do have their pros and their cons. What do you think about these dragons? Do you think the cons outweigh the pros? Or do you think that they might actually be worthy of spots in decks in the upcoming format? Leave it all in the comment section below. I did reach 200 subscribers, so contest video coming up soon. This is Smashing Pumpkin signing out. Peace.